Have you ever really stopped to think about how you get around? I mean, you walk out your front door, you go to the store, you find your way back, and you probably don't even give it a second thought. But for a machine, that simple task is one of the single biggest challenges in all of artificial intelligence. Well, a report from the US Army Research Laboratory gives us a fascinating peek at how we might finally teach a robot to see and navigate the world just like we do.
And it really all comes down to this question, doesn't it? For us, finding our way is intuitive. It's second nature. We use landmarks, we get a feel for a place. Robots, on the other hand, well, they've always relied on something way more rigid, and as we're about to see, a lot more fragile. Okay, so before we can even talk about the new, cool solution, we have to get to the heart of the problem. Why is it that these incredibly powerful, sophisticated machines can get so lost? And let me tell you, this is not a new problem. For more than 3 decades, scientists have been chasing what they call the holy grail of robotics, a machine that can navigate a totally new environment all by itself. It's such a monumental task that, even after all this time, we still haven't cracked it.
The traditional way of trying to solve this is something I like to call the blueprint brain method. It's all about perfect measurements, pinpoint precision, and unfortunately, a total inability to deal with the messy reality of the real world.
Now, the technical term for this is SLAM. And what it means is that the robot uses all its sensors to build this flawless, perfect, millimeter by millimeter map of its world, like a digital blueprint. Then, its whole job is to constantly figure out its exact coordinates on that map. Sounds super smart in theory, right? But it turns out that perfect blueprint is actually its greatest weakness. And here are the 4 huge reasons why that blueprint method just falls apart. First, you've got loop closure. The robot can walk in a giant circle and come right back to where it started and have no idea. It just sees a new place that looks familiar. Then there's correspondence. It can't tell if that hallway up ahead is a brand new one or the same one it saw 10 minutes ago, just from a different angle. The kidnapping problem is a fun one. If you literally just pick the robot up and move it 5 feet, it becomes hopelessly lost because it didn't track its own movement, and its perfect map is now useless. And the biggest one of all is dynamic worlds. The SLAM method assumes the world is frozen in time. A person walks by, someone moves a chair, a door that was open is now closed. Any of it can corrupt the entire map and leave the robot totally confused. So if the rigid, perfect robot way doesn't work, what's the alternative? Well, turns out we just have to look in the mirror. We don't use blueprints to get around, we use landmarks. This slide just nails the difference. On the left, you have the robot's approach, a metric map. It's a rigid grid where every millimeter is accounted for. But on the right, you have the human approach, a topological map. It's all about relationships. We don't think in GPS coordinates, we think in connections. Think about how you give directions. You don't say, proceed 52 meters on a 183-degree bearing. No, you say, turn left at the coffee shop, then go past that big weird tree. It's a flexible map, and it's way more robust when things change. But what actually makes a good landmark? Because we do this instinctively without even thinking. Well, there's 3 key things. First, it's got to have salience. It needs to stand out, be recognizable. That weird sculpture on the corner is a great landmark. One of 100 identical streetlights is not. Second, relevance. It has to actually help you make a decision, like a big sign for the street you need to turn on. And finally, permanence. A building is a fantastic landmark. A car that's parked on the street, a terrible one, because it's probably not going to be there tomorrow. Okay, so this is where it gets really clever. How do you teach this human intuition to a machine? Researchers at the Army Research Lab decided to build an algorithm around a very human idea. They decided to teach the robot how to spot when something is new and interesting. And here it is. This is the big idea, the absolute core of their approach. Instead of trying to teach the robot to recognize a door or a chair, they programmed it to create a landmark anytime its surroundings change in a big way. So if it's rolling down a long, boring, identical hallway, and suddenly, bam, there's an open doorway with a different room on the other side, that's a significant change. That becomes a landmark. And this is kind of what it looks like under the hood. The robot is constantly analyzing the visual data it's seeing. Look at the image on the left, the novel environment. See how that chart is all flat and spread out? That's the algorithm basically shouting, whoa, everything is new and different here. But now look at the right, the boring environment. That tall, sharp spike means the visual data is almost identical from one moment to the next. That's the algorithm saying, yep, still the same old hallway. Nothing to see here, folks. All right, so the theory is super elegant. It's human-inspired, it makes a ton of sense, but does it actually work? The researchers put this new algorithm through its paces to see what would happen.
In the first simple simulated test, the results were, well, they were mixed. The little black dots you see are the landmarks the algorithm decided to create. You can see it did a good job identifying the transition in the middle at location 3, but it completely whiffed on the 2 important corners at locations 1 and 2. So a promising start, but definitely not perfect.
So they refined the algorithm and then threw it into a much more complex, real-world environment. Now here, the numbered spots are doorways, places a human would definitely call a landmark. And you can see it did a whole lot better. It correctly tagged most of those doorways, from 1 all the way to 5. But it still struggled, completely missing the doorway over at location 6.
But for a robot, consistency is everything, right? So they ran the test 14 separate times. And this table, this is really telling. It shows how often the algorithm actually managed to identify each landmark. And the results are fascinating. The best it ever did was for location 2, which it found 78% of the time. That's not bad. But look at locations 1, 3, and 5, it only found them a little more than half the time. So while it's clearly on the right track, it's not something you could call reliable, at least not yet.
And all of this brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this research and to the next giant leap that needs to happen for truly intelligent robot navigation. What's the missing piece of the puzzle? And this is the profound takeaway. The robot is getting excellent at noticing that something is different. It sees the visual data change as it gets near a doorway. But here's the thing. It has no idea what a doorway is. It doesn't understand its function, that it's a way to get from one space to another. It can identify the change, but it can't yet grasp the meaning behind it. Look, this research is a critical step forward. It's moving robots away from those fragile, perfect blueprints and toward a much more flexible, human-like way of seeing the world. The next massive challenge is bridging that gap between just seeing change and actually understanding meaning. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. Once they can finally do that, once they can truly understand our world, where will they take us next?